I called my lawyer and told him to move forward with filing for separation. I couldn't stay in a marriage where lies and betrayal had become the norm. It wasn't just about protecting my assets anymore. It was about protecting my peace of mind and the values I'd spent a lifetime trying to uphold. The next morning, Linda was served with the papers. She exploded, crying, screaming, accusing me of abandoning her and Sarah. But I didn't flinch. I didn't yell back. I refused to let her chaos drag me down with her. "This is your doing, Linda," I said, quiet but steady. "You made this choice the moment you decided to betray me." She packed a bag that same afternoon and left to stay with Sarah. As the front door slammed shut behind her, I felt a strange mix of emotions: grief, relief, anger, and something close to peace. This wasn't how I imagined my life would turn out. But I knew I was doing the right thing. The fallout from my decision was swift. Friends started asking questions. Extended family picked sides. Rumors spread. But I stayed silent. I didn't feel the need to defend myself, not anymore. I had the truth on my side. And more importantly, I had finally reclaimed control of my life. Linda and Sarah immediately went on a smear campaign, calling family members, spinning wild stories, and claiming I was trying to cheat them out of their rightful inheritance. But I'd already prepared for this. I shared the evidence of the forged will with close family members, screenshots, expert reports, signed affidavits. Most of them quickly saw through the lies. The few who didn't? I decided they weren't worth my energy. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was regaining control of my life. But I also knew it wasn't over. Linda and Sarah weren't the type to back down quietly. And sure enough, the days following Linda's move-out were a whirlwind. They went full offensive. Calls started pouring in. Family members I hadn't heard from in months, suddenly concerned. "Why are you disinheriting Sarah? How could you leave Linda like that? Don't you think you're being extreme?" They'd painted me as a cold, selfish villain, abandoning my family, turning my back on a helpless daughter. But I was ready. My lawyer and I had already discussed this possibility. If it came down to it, we'd release key pieces of evidence: the forged will, the forensic handwriting report, and documented proof of Linda's tampering. I started with my siblings. My younger sister was the first to call, her voice shaky. "Dan, what's going on? Linda's saying you've completely turned your back on her and the kids. That doesn't sound like you." "It's not," I said, trying to stay calm. "But it's not what she's telling you either. Let me explain." I told her everything. The forged signature. The secret will. The way Linda and Sarah had tried to quietly erase Mark and Hannah from the picture. When I finished, there was a pause on the other end. "She actually forged your name?" she finally asked. "Dan, that's not just wrong. That's illegal." "Exactly," I said. "And now she's playing victim to cover her tracks." My sister was furious. She promised to tell the rest of the family the real story, and slowly, the tide began to turn. Relatives who had rushed to Linda's defense began backing off. It wasn't just about loyalty anymore. It was about facts. The audacity of what Linda had done was simply too much to ignore. But of course, Linda and Sarah weren't finished. Sarah, in particular, took her tantrum to social media, posting cryptic, passive-aggressive messages about toxic parents, stolen legacies, and how she deserved better. It was honestly pathetic. But I refused to engage. I wasn't going to sink to their level. Then came the real push. They filed a formal petition in court, challenging the validity of the new will. My lawyer called me the moment he got the papers. "Dan, it's exactly what we expected," he said. "They're claiming the new will is unfair, and Sarah is being denied her inheritance. What are our chances?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "They don't have a leg to stand on," he said confidently. "The forged will, the evidence of tampering, this case is going nowhere. But we'll be thorough. We'll shut this down completely." I wasn't worried about the outcome. What frustrated me was the cruelty, the obsession, the fact that they were willing to burn everything down just to get their way. Court day arrived quicker than expected. I sat quietly, flanked by my attorney, while Linda and Sarah sat across from me, whispering and glaring, their bitterness palpable. When the judge reviewed the evidence, the forged documents, the forensic expert's report, my lawyer's sworn testimony, it wasn't even close. The case was dismissed outright. A wave of relief hit me like a flood. But Linda and Sarah weren't done. After the hearing, I stepped into the hallway, ready to finally breathe. That's when Sarah approached, eyes narrowed, jaw clenched. "This isn't over, Dad," she said, voice dripping with venom. "You'll regret this. You can't just cut me out of your life like this," Sarah snapped. "I didn't cut you out," I replied, keeping my voice calm. "You and your mother made these choices. I tried to be fair, but you've shown me time and time again that fairness isn't what you're interested in. This is on you, Sarah." She stared at me for a moment, stunned, and then stormed off. And in that moment, I felt something I didn't expect: peace. For years, I'd bent over backwards for Sarah. I tried to help her, guide her, teach her what it meant to take responsibility. But it was never enough. She didn't want a father, she wanted an ATM. And finally, I was done. Back home, I began the long, slow process of rebuilding. I focused on what mattered, on Mark and Hannah, on the people who'd been there for me through everything. One evening, Hannah and her husband came over for dinner. We laughed. We shared stories. It felt normal again. After the meal, she pulled me aside. "Dad, I know this has been hard," she said, her voice soft. "But I just want you to know, we're proud of you. You've handled this better than I ever could have." Her words meant more than I could say. For so long, I'd felt like the villain in my own story, like I was the one tearing the family apart. But hearing that from Hannah, it reminded me why I made those decisions in the first place. After the court case, the dust began to settle. Linda and Sarah's challenge had been crushed, their lies exposed, and their attempt to spin the story to the rest of the family? It fell flat. Once the forged will and Linda's manipulation became common knowledge, most people wanted nothing to do with them. Some relatives reached out, shocked at how far Linda and Sarah had gone. But I was done rehashing it. The facts spoke for themselves. From what I heard, Linda stayed with Sarah after moving out. But things weren't going well. Sarah struggled to maintain her lifestyle. No more handouts, no more unlimited resources. And Linda? She doubled down, draining her own finances to support her. It was hard to watch, even from a distance. I felt pity, frustration, but mostly I felt like I'd made the right call. Meanwhile, my own life started to take shape again. The divorce process was swift, thanks in no small part to the overwhelming evidence of Linda's betrayal. I was granted full ownership of my estate. Linda walked away with a settlement my lawyer had negotiated. It wasn't what she wanted, but it was fair. More than fair. By the time the papers were signed, I wasn't happy, exactly, but I was free. And that meant everything. My relationship with Mark and Hannah grew stronger in the months that followed. They'd been my anchor, my compass through the storm. I made a point to remind them how much that meant to me. We started spending more time together. Family dinners, weekend visits, even a few trips. For the first time in years, our time together wasn't clouded by tension or manipulation. It was just family. Real family. One evening, Mark came over to help me fix a few things around the house. We laughed as we worked, falling into the familiar rhythm of father and son. At one point, he set his wrench down and looked at me. "You know, Dad," he said, "I never realized how much you were dealing with until all this happened. You've handled it better than I think I ever could." I shrugged. "You do what you have to, Mark. That's all." "No, seriously," he said. "A lot of people would have crumbled under that kind of pressure. But you stood your ground. I hope I can do the same if I ever face something like that." His words hit me hard, in the best way. Because for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a failure. I felt like a father who had done the right thing. Hearing Mark say that reassured me that I'd done the right thing, not just for myself, but for the family that truly cared about me. As for Sarah, I decided to let her go. For years, I'd bent over backward to help her, to teach her responsibility, to guide her toward a better path. But this ordeal made it clear that she wasn't interested in changing, not as long as she had Linda enabling her. I knew I couldn't force her to grow up. that was a decision she'd have to make on her own. So, I stopped reaching out. I stopped trying to fix things. It was painful, but it was necessary. A few months after the divorce, I heard through the grapevine that Sarah had tried to manipulate a distant relative into loaning her money. When that didn't work, she started bouncing from job to job, always blaming her bosses or coworkers for why things didn't pan out. Linda continued to support her as best she could, but it was clear their relationship was strained. I didn't take any joy in their struggles, but I also didn't feel responsible for them anymore. Reflecting on everything, I realized how much I'd learned from this experience. For years, I'd let guilt and obligation dictate my actions, especially when it came to Sarah and Linda. I'd convinced myself that being a good husband and father meant sacrificing my own needs, my own peace, to keep everyone else happy. But this ordeal taught me that there's a limit to how much you can give before it starts to break you. As I sit here writing this, I feel a sense of closure. My life isn't perfect. There are still wounds that will take time to heal. But I'm in a better place now. And if there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that lead to the most growth.